Hello, thank you for joining me. The question here says a body of mass 12 kilogram is pulled along a horizontal floor by a horizontal force of 45 Newton with an acceleration of 3.5 meter per second square. Calculate the frictional force between the body and floor. So here we have to calculate the force of friction that is opposing a moving body on a floor. So let me make a sketch of what we have here. So this is the object, for example, resting on a horizontal floor. So we are told that the body is pulled with a force. I'll call that pulling force P. So that is the force with which it is pulled. And then we are also told that there's a frictional force that is opposing the motion. So let me call that frictional force F subscript F, frictional force. And then we are told that the mass of the object is 12 kilogram. And then we are told that it moves with an acceleration of 3.5 meter per second. Don't forget, the value of the force with which it is pulled is 45 Newton. That is, the value of this P is 45 Newton. And we have to find the frictional force. Now, in a question like this, where friction opposes motion, what we just need to understand here is that the force with which it is pulled, the force with which it is pulled, which is P minus the frictional force that is opposing motion. Don't forget the object is moving in this direction. So the frictional force is in this direction, opposing motion. So the force with which it is pulled minus the frictional force, F subscript F now, that together should be equal to the net force. Let me call that F net. Let me call it F net. Let me spell it out, net. So the force with which it is pulled minus the frictional force is equal to the net force with which the object moves in this direction. So this is the force, the resultant force with which it moves in this direction. So this resultant force, this net force, is the force that is pulling it, the original value of the force pulling it, minus the frictional force that is opposing motion. So now we can substitute values and get the value of the frictional force. Don't forget, from the question, it is pulled with a force of 45 Newton. So the object is pulled with a force of 45 Newton. So that means the value of P is 45. 45 minus the frictional force, which is what we are looking for, and that will be equal to the net force. Now, the net force will be equal to the formula F is equal to ma. That is the mass times the acceleration is the net force with which the object is moving. Take note of that. So the net force is simply ma. That's the force with which it is moving. Don't forget, when a body is moving with an acceleration multiplied by the mass of that body, that gives you the force that is acting on that moving body. That's the force with which that moving object is going in that direction. So we can now substitute values to get the frictional force. So I can simply say 45 minus frictional force is equal to the mass, which is 12 kg, 12, multiplied by the acceleration. Acceleration is 3.5 meter per second. You can see it here, 3.5. So multiply by 3.5. Then we can solve further, and I have 45 minus the frictional force is equal to 12.5 multiplied by 3.5 will give us 42. So now I can take the frictional force to avoid negative sign. I'll take this frictional force to this side and bring this 42 to this left-hand side. So I have 45 here. This is positive 42. When it moves to the left-hand side, it becomes negative 42 since it is changing side. And is equal to, this is a negative frictional force. If it comes to this side, it becomes positive frictional. That's the frictional force. So 45 minus 42 will give me 3, and that will be equal to the frictional force, Ff. So finally, I can conclude by saying the frictional force, Ff, that's the frictional force, is equal to 3 Newton, and that's the final answer. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and share this video so that others can learn from it. And don't forget to join me in my next video. Thank you for watching.